The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
You know, it was 6 years ago that Alex Ovechkin and the Capitals celebrated with the Stanley Cup like perhaps no other NHL team who won the championship did before. It remains a vivid memory of those guys rolling around town with the cup, telling people on social media where they were, people partying with them the day they showed up at Nats Park with the cup, and drank so many beers in a box that they filled up the window with Bud Light cans. Oh, man, those are the days. And the story of the Stanley Cup, it's the greatest trophy in sports, let's be honest here. But the story of the way it is celebrated is just incredible. And yesterday on the Rich Eisen show, he had the keeper of the cup. His name is Howie Borrow, B-R-R-O-W, spelled like borrow, which is very fitting because everybody who wins the Stanley Cup gets to borrow it for a day. And he told a bunch of stories about the cup, traveling around with it. What a great job he has, man, the keeper of the cup. And he's got a doozy about Alex Ovechkin, which I had not heard until yesterday. We'll get to that in the 10 o'clock hour. Jay Gruden, kind of making a career in media these days, was on John Keim's podcast the other day and discussed the quarterbacks. And he's in favor of the Commanders taking Jaden Daniels, but he's got some interesting insight on picking quarterbacks. We'll get to that later this hour. John Calipari, one day he's wearing blue, the next day he's wearing red, and he's wearing Arkansas red now. Showed up at a news conference yesterday, and we'll play some of what he said and some brutal honesty from him as well as to the team he is inheriting. And he's 65 years old. A lot of guys his age have gotten out, and he sounds invigorated and sounds like he understands how the game is played these days, and he's ready to make the transition. So we'll get to that later this hour. But last night we had the debut of Jackson Holliday for the Baltimore Orioles, and what a great job Mike Elias has done in drafting and developing these guys. I mean, 2 years ago, he brings up Adley Rutschman. Last year, he brings up Gunnar Henderson. Gunnar Henderson wins American League Rookie of the Year. And last night, it's Jackson Holliday. Now, okay, you look at the line, and it's not great. He was 0 for 4. And he misplayed a ball in the outfield that probably should have been taken by Colton Cowser, one of those pop-ups that infielders go running back and try and catch over their head. He missed that, which allowed a run to score. But the Orioles came back to win the game 7-5, and he is now in the major leagues. He now has a day of service, and he had his brother, who's also a prospect there, his grandfather, and his dad, Matt Holliday, who's a great player himself in his day. In fact, there was I think it was Melanie Newman who said this during the broadcast last night, that before the game, he said, if I knew Jackson would get to the majors this quickly, I might have tried to hang around for another 6 years to do that. Most famously, it was the Griffeys, Ken Griffey and Ken Griffey Jr., who played together with the Mariners and hit back-to-back home runs. I don't know if we'll ever have anything like that in baseball again, but, we got LeBron trying to do it with Bronny in the NBA, becoming the first to do that in basketball, and it's happened a number of times in baseball, but that would have been something if Matt Holliday was still playing and Jackson was able to make his debut. But he made it last night, and it's out of the way, and he seemed to be feeling, even though he had took the collar 0 for 4, seemed to be pretty pleased with the way it went.
Obviously, I would have liked to gotten a few hits, but the overall experience was pretty incredible tonight. To be able to go out there and win and have an RBI. I mean, it's pretty awesome just to be here.
How much more special is it for this to happen at Fenway Park? Yeah,
it's really neat. The history of this ballpark. Got to come here as a little kid and watch my dad play, and to be able to be out there and competing, it's very special.
Is there a moment sitting so close to you? Did you look over at them at any point?
I try not to. I don't know. They're just sitting right there. I think Kevin Millar hooked them up with some good tickets, but it's really cool to be able to have them there, and I'm very happy that they were able to make it.
Was there a moment where it all just kind of hit you that
you're in the big leagues now?
Yeah, I mean, just getting to compete against these guys that I've watched on TV for so long, and like guys like Devers, and it's really cool. Standing out there looking around the monster and all the people, and they're singing the songs, and it was a really cool experience.
Kind of ironic, too, for Dad, in that he was part of that Cardinal team, which the Red Sox broke the 86-year curse against. Yes, it's more memorable what they did in the ALCS when they came from 3-0 down to beat the Yankees, but it was the Cardinals that they beat in the World Series, swept them, as a matter of fact, 20 years ago, and Matt Holliday was a part of that. Now, before the game, Jackson Holliday said that he expected to be more excited than nervous, and apparently that was the case.
Yeah, I wasn't very nervous. Obviously, my results weren't what I liked, but I wasn't nervous. I felt comfortable on defense, and I felt comfortable at the plate. Felt like I took some good swings and just wasn't able to capitalize on some.
After watching your dad for so many years in big league ballpark, what did it mean to you to just have him in the seats watching you play your first big league game?
Yeah, it's really cool to be able to look over there and have him and my brother and my grandpa sitting down the line. It was really cool to be able to see them, and it's quite an experience.
By the way, if you haven't seen Jackson Holliday, if he showed up to take your daughter to the junior prom, you wouldn't be surprised. He looks like he's 15 years old. He got a baby face, but they're hopeful that he can start to do the things in the major leagues that he has been doing in the minor leagues, hitting .333 this spring with a couple of home runs, and they'll see if he can get going tonight. They batted him ninth, and I think they would like to have him much higher in the order. He's got some speed. He may ultimately replace Gunnar Henderson as the leadoff guy, maybe moving Henderson down to number 2. But last night they batted him ninth, played him at second base, and looks like that will probably stand up for tonight as well as they close out the series against the Red Sox. He'll make his home debut tomorrow night. Now, the biggest story right now in baseball is the pitching injuries and what to do about it. The Players Association says, well, there's not enough time between pitches. That's what's led to all these injuries that are occurring. It seems to be much more complicated than that, and it's not like this just happened overnight or the last 2 years, which they've had the pitch clock. It's something that's been brewing for a long time. And Chelsea Janes has a look at this today in the Washington Post, and she points out in the past week alone, Framber Valdez, Spencer Strider, Jonathan Loaiza, Nick Pivetta, Yuri Perez, and Shane Bieber joined the club of pitchers who will miss some time because of elbow injuries or surgeries. That club already includes Cole, Ray, Shohei Ohtani, Jacob deGrom, Sandy Alcantara, Kyle Bradish, John Means, Luis Garcia, Lucas Giolito, Felix Bautista, who was the great closer, remember, last year for the Orioles. He's not going to pitch this year. Shane McClanahan, Herman Marquez, Liam Hendricks, Tyler Mile, Jeffrey Springs, and Shane Baz. Then you've got the older pitchers with injuries as well. Justin Verlander's on the shelf with a shoulder problem. Max Scherzer's trying to make his way back. Brandon Woodruff, Clayton Kershaw, Eduardo Rodriguez, Josiah Gray. Not that he's a longtime veteran, but he's now on the injured list as well. She says 10 years ago, renowned orthopedic surgeon James Andrews, yes, that James Andrews, declared the rising prevalence of the procedure, the Tommy John surgery, which repairs the ulnar collateral ligament, as an epidemic. It has grown since. When Andrews announced his retirement earlier this year, he summed up his explanation in an interview with MLB.com. These kids are throwing 90 miles an hour their junior year of high school. The ligament itself can't withstand that kind of force. We've learned in our research lab that baseball is a developmental sport. The Tommy John ligament matures at about age 26. In high school, the red line, where the forces go beyond the tensile properties of the ligament, is about 80 miles an hour. So you got high school kids who are throwing 100, and James Andrews is saying, and he's done hundreds of these procedures, says you can't throw that fast at that age. You get to be 100 miles an hour when you're 26. Sure, there's exceptions to the rule, like Nolan Ryan, who was a fireballer when he came up with the Mets and he was 21. But the reality is, this is what's happened. This generation of pitchers who started throwing as hard as they could at the age of 10, we now have this epidemic of elbow injuries. Now, Yesterday, Verlander, who again is trying to make his way back not from an elbow injury but from a shoulder injury, he weighed in on this and made some really smart points about why this all adds up to this situation. Not one factor, and not, as the Players Association simplifies it to, the pitch clock. This was Verlander yesterday.
I think it'd be easy to sit here and blame the pitch clock. I think in reality, you put everything together, and everything has a little bit of influence. I think the biggest thing is the style of pitching has changed so much. Everybody's throwing as hard as they possibly can and spinning the ball as hard as they possibly can. And, it's hard to deny those results. Obviously, how can you? It's a double-edged sword. How can you tell somebody to go out there and not do that when they're capable of throwing 100? And this young guy comes up and throws a pitch 95 and gives up a big homer, and everybody's like, "What the hell, man?" So something needs to change. I don't have all the answers. I know pitching, and I've been. I don't want to beat a dead horse here. It is what it is. I think the data's out there at this point. But when the balls started to change back in 2016 and they started flying out a bit more frequently, I know myself personally that started changing how I had to approach pitching. You have to start swinging. You have to start approaching the batter as I want swing and miss. I can't have him put the ball in play where the old adage, pitch down, pitch away from the guy, hit your spot, get weak contact early in the count, and then you can kind of go up. And that kind of went out the window when everybody started being able to leave the yard, especially opposite field. And look, like I said, I'm not here to. I've said my piece on that before in the past, and it is what it is. As long as we're all out here competing on an even playing field, that's what I care about, and we all have the same baseball in our hands, so that's that. But I do think that you throw that in the mix, and you throw analytics in the mix, and you throw the pitch clock in the mix, and it all kind of adds up. And it's unfortunate. I don't know how we rewind the clock. Maybe there's some sort of way to incentivize starting pitching, going deeper in games. I remember I talked to Scherzer at length last year with the Mets, and we talked about having the starting pitcher be tied to a DH, and having you have to achieve certain milestones before. If the pitcher comes out and he hasn't achieved any of those milestones, you lose your DH. So at least the team is incentivized to teach their pitchers to go through the lineup 3 times. Whereas right now, nobody's incentivized to do that. No teams are incentivized to tell their pitcher, okay, let's go through the lineup 3 times. Let's navigate a lineup. Those aren't conversations that are had anymore. Nobody's fault. It's just the nature of the game where it's at right now. But if that mind shift switches and teams start incentivizing, okay, how do we get guys out 3 times? Because right now, 3rd time through the lineup, they're looking for an excuse to take you out. Because analytically, it says that batters have more success 3rd time through. So I can't sit here and blame anybody. But the second that you start incentivizing pitchers staying in the game longer, throwing 110 pitches, throwing 100 pitches, navigating the lineup, then the trickle down permeates all the way to Little League Baseball. Everybody's trying to get to this level. So you want to go play D1, now you got to throw hard and you got to spin the ball well. You want to go to the minor leagues, you got to throw hard, spin the ball well. And, it all starts from here down. The second that you start incentivizing pitching and guys are getting drafted because they can pitch and get guys out, then that goes down a level and then down a level and down a level. And, I just hope that we don't wait too long because, it's obviously a pandemic and it's going to take years to work itself out because everybody right now, Little League on. Go look no further than Instagram. I can't look at my Instagram feed without seeing, some kids trying to learn how to throw as hard as they can at 10 years old. I sure as hell didn't do that. I didn't figure it out until college. I matured into my body. I was, I say it all the time. If I came up in today's world, I don't know what would happen. My mechanics were a little different. I was tall, lanky, lean, skinny, lean, weird, kind of hadn't hit my maturity. Went to college, didn't get drafted, went to college and kind of grew into myself, and all of a sudden started throwing hard. But it wasn't because I did some, program to make me throw harder. So it's hard. Hard question.
So, obviously, Justin Verlander has given it some thought. As for what baseball can do, Chelsea James points out in her story today that baseball has sought to address the changing approach to pitching many times over the past few years. It cracked down on sticky substances used for better grip, to limit the skyrocketing spin rates. It implemented the 3-batter minimum to prevent relentless matchups late in games, but at times the concern has felt more aesthetic than health-related. The starting pitcher used to define games, to serve as the big draw, eat innings, and ensure there weren't more pitching changes late in games than runs scored. And, it's not that. The Nats called up Johan Adon the other night. He pitched 4 innings, and they used 5 other relievers to finish out the game. And they won the game 5-3. There's a lot of things that go into this. And Pedro Martinez, who threw hard for a long time, I mean, he's not a big guy. And you looked at the velocity that he threw with, and you said, how is it possible coming from a body that size? But he knew how to pitch, and he had been brought up in a way that he was able to develop. And he weighed in on this yesterday on Twitter, saying when we see so many up-and-coming major league pitchers with fewer than 200 innings in the minors, lots of muscle mass, underworked baby ligaments, and a team demanding max velo on everything they throw, we're seeing the perfect lethal combination for arm injury. He said the analytics department has forced the young kids by pressuring them to have revolution, velocity, and spin rate. That's too much for baby ligaments. And he's not a doctor, but James Andrews is. And he's telling you that the Tommy John ligament matures at about age 26. Well, they're kids 10 years younger that are being taught to throw as hard as they can, and it's going to take a toll. Martinez does not blame the pitch clock for all the injuries. He says that's not the case. He says you start approaching the batter like, I want a swing and a miss. You can put the ball in play. Right. I mean, they're all taught to blow it by as fast as they can, and it adds up. And that's why we have, it's part of the reason that we have all these injuries. And this is not sustainable. Baseball has to do something about it. And plus, you see who's getting these big contracts. Verlander and Scherzer are making $40 million plus. Well, that's great if they're out there pitching and winning games for you. But if they're on the shelf, it's not helping you. And Steven Strasburg, who collected $245 million to pitch, 50 innings? Something like that, since throw 500 pitches since he had signed that contract. That's not going to be sustainable for baseball. They've got to figure something out, and it's just not working the way it's going right now, and it's probably going to get worse because this generation of pitchers now were taught to throw as hard as they could from the time they were in Little League, and that, as we're finding out, is very, very damaging. All right, Jay Gruden has taken a look at the quarterbacks that the Commanders are considering. Talked to John Keim about that. And Russell Wilson is starting to become RG3-ish. I'll get to that in just a minute. Stay with us. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
All right, we got Tony off today, so Mike Callow will be in for him. And coming up in the next hour, there's some great stories about the Stanley Cup. Not the teams that won it, but the cup itself. And the keeper of the cup was on the Rich Eisen story with some wild Rich Eisen show. Did I say story? Rich Eisen show with some wild stories about the cup, including what Alexander Ovechkin did with it back 6 years ago when the Capitals won it all. Before I get to what Jay Gruden said about the quarterbacks, talking to John Keim on his podcast the other day, Russell Wilson is starting to drift into RG3 territory, making it all about himself whenever he can, delusional thoughts about why his career has gone south, and just saying some ridiculous things. Like he said the other day on, I guess, Outkick the coverage. If you ever watch that, not a fan of that. It's not exactly my side of the aisle there, but this is what he said. He said, for me, meaning Russell Wilson, to go to back-to-back Super Bowls and win one of them, I think I opened up a lot of doors. Now you see guys like Patrick Mahomes who won it. It's really like, so far, there's more to come. What? What? That he was the one that blazed the trail? Excuse me? Pardon me? Russell Wilson was drafted in 2012. Guy by the name of Doug Williams became the first African-American quarterback to start a Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl in 1988. So what are we talking about here? 24 years, right? 24 years before you were drafted, and then later went to back-to-back Super Bowls, losing one of them, by the way, and winning the other one, that you blazed a trail for Patrick Mahomes. You did that. I mean, if you really want to go back, it's Marlon Briscoe in the 1960s who played well for the Denver Broncos, but they moved him to wide receiver. It was Shaq Harris coming out of Grambling who paved the way for Doug Williams to have his chance in the NFL. And it was Joe Gibbs who understood that Doug Williams had the capabilities to be a great quarterback and pushed the Buccaneers to draft him. And a couple of years later, second year, I believe, they were in the NFC Championship game. So, excuse me, stop that and learn something here. You know, you're not some young guy. You're in your mid-30s. You've been around the league a long time. Hopefully you met Doug Williams along the way. And you're taking credit for the ability for Patrick Mahomes to go to Super Bowls. And by the way, Mahomes has won 3 of them. He's been to 4. So, yeah, I think you need to get a little bit of an education there. You need to find out some other thoughts on that you were the one that did it. Yeah, you were helpful, no question about it. And maybe the trail that you blazed might be for shorter quarterbacks. So Drew Brees was before you, but you kind of put to bed some of the thoughts about size. I don't think that's something that you should run away from. That's an important thing. But no, the race part of it, while you move the ball down the field, so to speak, realize what Doug Williams did and what he faced, and how Doug Williams couldn't get a job after the USFL folded. And it was Joe Gibbs who said, "You want to come in as a backup?" He says, "Well, that's the only offer I got, so I'll do that." And it was Doug Williams who was playing for an owner who I believe was racist, and Hugh Culverhouse with Tampa Bay when he was the lowest paid quarterback in the league, and he wouldn't give him a raise, and so that's why he left football for a year, resurfaced in the USFL, and came back to Washington. So learn something before you open your mouth, Russell Wilson. Learn something and understand what this what you're talking about before you just babble on like that. Jay Gruden. I guess coaching career is kaput. He did work as an assistant for a year or two after he got fired here, but now he's trying to make it in media, and was on the John Keim podcast the other day, taking a look at the 3 possibilities at quarterback for Washington. That's assuming that Caleb Williams goes number 1 to the Chicago Bears, Jaden Daniels, Drake Maye, or J.J. McCarthy of Michigan. Those 3. And this was Gruden's take on the 3 and where he would rank them.
Jaden, probably with the combination of his athleticism and his arm talent and his accuracy, would probably be my number 2 pick. Because if you have to play quarterback as a rookie, they have to be athletic and they have to run you out of some arm's way plays. The only issue with Jaden is his stature. You might be concerned about some of the hits he took. He got a concussion against Alabama, get knocked out of that game. That's a concern I have with them. Drake Maye, I think, is a young 21-year-old kid who's got a long way to go from developing his accuracy and his anticipation and things of that nature. I don't think he's quite ready to jump into the starting role right away, though he'll probably be forced to, but he is a big athletic kid and studies the game extremely well. And then JJ he's the wild card because he wasn't asked to do a whole lot. It wasn't his fault. They didn't throw the ball very much. He threw for just under 3,000 yards in both his years at Michigan, but he only lost 1 game. So he did what Jim Harbaugh asked him to do and produce at a very high level. So I think I wasn't able to go to his pro day and all that and see him in person and talk to him. And a lot's going to be how he did at his pro day, how the ball came out of his hand, how he does in these individual meetings with people, how he retains information. And that's a case for all these guys. If Jaden's the best athlete and throws the ball very well, but he doesn't retain information very good, he might drop and JJ might rise or Drake might rise. So unfortunately, I haven't been in those meetings. Right. A lot of it has to be, based on the mental capacity of these guys. Like CJ Stroud, obviously, he took some weird test and didn't do very well, but his football knowledge is exceptional. You can see that when he plays for the Texans. So these guys, if they're asked to come in and play as a rookie and start, they got to be able to retain a lot of information. And it's mentally, it's a grind for these guys. And I think the one that can handle it the best, if it's close, that's the one you take.
So obviously, that's where those top 30 visits come into play, I'm sure, in a big way. How important do you think? Because if you're, and again, Washington's been very secret. Adam Peters, Dan Quinn been very secretive about this, which they should be. But when you're where do you think you would be at with this? If you're trying to decide, when do you think you would really want to know or need to know to settle on a guy? I mean, would you want to wait till after those in-home visits, I guess, so to speak?
Oh, for sure. You gotta get as much information as you can. Make sure their health records all come out positive and they're good. Caleb has never taken a physical, so you never know if Caleb might be there too. If he drops, Chicago takes Jaden. Who knows what's going to happen there? Or they trade out of the first pick. I don't know, but you got to be prepared. The good thing is that you're going to have one of the top two. So obviously you got your pick of the litter pretty much. But the home visits are very important. Bringing the quarterbacks into your room. You get them for a couple hours, 2-3 hours in your building. You're talking football. You're talking your terminology, how they can retain that information. And most of these guys, if they played significant amount of football, they'll be able to do it. But still, you can still get a good gauge for their attention to detail, how their passion is for the game of football. What's important to them. Can't really gauge how much of a good leader they'll be, but you kind of get that feeling of how he interacts with other people, which is very important for a quarterback, So all those things will weigh into the decision the Commanders have to make.
That's Jay Gruden, who does know quarterbacks. You can say what you want about him as a head coach, but was a quarterback himself in the Arena League. Did a really good job with Andy Dalton when he was the offensive coordinator in Cincinnati before coming here. And, he had to deal with the mess of RG3. He did, I think, a good job with Kirk Cousins. But then he had Alex Smith, and Alex Smith was playing, well, not lighting the scoreboard up. Some were saying that they were winning in spite of him, but they were winning. And then he got hurt, and that was pretty much the end of the line for Jay Gruden, as it turned out. But he does know quarterback play and articulates it very, very well. Now, as far as the mental part of it and retaining information, which he says is obviously important, it pretty much sunk Heath Schuler because he just wasn't up to what it took to be an NFL quarterback. But when he talks about that, here's what he looks at and how he is able to make a determination on retention.
I used to send them a playbook, a week or two before they came to our visit. Not a whole playbook, but a condensed version of a playbook with some runs, some formations, some plays, some pass concepts, quick game, bootlegs. And then we'd quiz him on it and see what he knew and understood. I might put a mistake in there, see if he picked up on the mistake, and most of them do. And they study it, and they're pretty well. They're all pretty well equipped to come in here. Some of them struggle a little bit, but for the most part, all the top guys are really well prepared and understand football and do a pretty good job.
You tell when you're watching these quarterbacks, like let's go with Jaden first of all. So when you're watching him, can you tell, what are the things that you're looking for with him? We see the athleticism, but what are you looking for out of him?
I think the most impressive thing in my mind about Jaden is how much he's gotten better from Arizona State to LSU. And I know he had better people at LSU, but I think his pocket awareness has just improved greatly. I think at Arizona State, he was looking to run every chance he could get. You can see him now as he progresses into his fifth year of playing college football, his ability to go through progressions and keep his feet still and calm. And then when he has to take off, obviously he can do that. But that's been, I think, my most impressive thing about Jaden coming out is his ability to stay in the pocket, keep his feet clean, and get to his second, third, and fourth progression and throw the ball accurately. He does have some accuracy issues from time to time. He gets lazy with his feet. He throws off his back foot from time to time, but most quarterbacks do. And he has to protect himself a lot better going on the next level. He can't do those reckless, get hit face plays. And I'm sure he'll do that, and they'll talk about that. But that's why I like Jaden too.
So he's all in on Jaden Daniels, and not that he's been to the pro days or anything, but he talks to people and has a lot of contacts in the NFL, and again knows quarterback play. Now, what you heard about Drake Maye, and we had Mel Kiper on this week, and I will play some of that interview next week as we get closer to the draft. But he said that Drake Maye is the project here. He hasn't played enough football. He's only played 2 years of football. There's some things that have to be developed and not as ready out of the box as Jaden Daniels, who played 5 years of college football. By the way, if you missed the Mel conversation, one of the things he said about Jaden Daniels, which you may not be aware of, is he was considering coming out before last season And his mother called Mel, and he said there was a lengthy conversation where he said to her, look, if he comes out, he's probably going to be a 4th-round pick. It might be in his best interest to go back. He did, and now he's going to be probably one of the top 2 taken, maybe as low as 3, probably doesn't get past 5. And the common thinking among the experts, including Mel, is that he will go number 2 to Washington. Now, as for Maye, while he checks a lot of boxes in terms of size, in terms of arm strength, there are things that have to be worked on. And this is Gruden's analysis of what he's seen on tape from Drake Maye and what needs to be corrected.
Well, he's only played 2 years at North Carolina. He's 21 years old. You know, he's going to go against guys like Russell Wilson, who's 38, Kirk Cousins, who's 38, Aaron Rodgers, who's over 40. So these guys have been playing for a very long time. And, you know, just from a fundamental standpoint, from a protection standpoint, he got hit a lot, free runners in his face a lot. So he's thrown off his back foot. You hope that with a clean pocket, he will have the necessary fundamentals to get the ball out and anticipate throws where he doesn't have to take a lot of hits. But the good thing is, like Josh Allen, he has the size and the strength. And very similar to Josh coming out of Wyoming. I remember doing Josh. I was like, this guy misses a lot of throws. He's not very accurate. And some people say the same thing about Drake Maye, but Josh has made it work. And I think Drake can do the same thing with a lot of work and a lot of throws, a lot of fundamental, getting used to his receivers. All that stuff will make him better.
It's funny because, like, one of the things, and you know, you wonder, how does accuracy travel from college to NFL? Is it a hard thing to correct going from one level to the other?
It is. It is. You know, I personally didn't really like Josh Allen that much coming out. That shows how much I know, because I didn't think, you know, he could be that inaccurate, and I didn't realize he was 6'5", 260 and could run people over like he does. You know, I would have taken that into account. And we weren't really looking for a quarterback either at that time. Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that can be corrected. But the size and the ability to run and create plays with his legs and off-schedule plays is what Drake can do as well. And some teams will take that. And he's a guy with the quarterback design runs that he can run the powers with the pulling guards and all that stuff. I don't think Jaden, you want to put Jaden in that. He can do some zone reads and all that stuff, but not some of the direct runs that Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen do. Drake Maye can do those, which opens up your playbook even more. And he'll continue to get better with his accuracy with time. That's why, you know, he may be the second pick, because he has, like you say, a higher ceiling possibly.
Yeah, but the big thing that you can't figure out is how is this going to transfer from college to the pros? You know, sometimes it works out, and here's a trained eye who looks at a quarterback in Josh Allen and says, "Oh, coming out of Wyoming, no, I don't think he's going to be able to make that transition." Obviously, he's been able to do it. But there are others who, you know, work in a college offense, and RG3, although he didn't like the fact that they tailored the college offense for him, he wanted to be instantly Aaron Rodgers and never became that. That's the big thing. He never had a playbook in college. And that's the thing that is the most intriguing about these prospects, is how do they make the transition from what is a pretty simple thing to a very complicated thing. And here's how Gruden articulates that.
This is a tough game. I mean, all the coverages and all the blitzes and all the runs you got to say, formations, and it is a very difficult game for these young guys to jump into. They're in college. They're looking over the sideline. The coach is calling a play. They clap their hands and they catch it and they throw it. You know what I mean? A lot of people can do that. Not a lot of people can go to the line of scrimmage and recognize the defense and communicate it to the other people and then execute at a very high level. It's just very difficult. The speed of the game, the different coverages you see, the different blitzes you see, the reaction time has got to be that much quicker from college to pros, and some people can't handle it. And then they get on a team that's not very good. Most of these top draft picks, they're drafted number one because they're terrible. They're not very good. Chicago's an exception. They played very good at the end of the year, and they got the number one pick from Arizona, I think it was. So I think Caleb will do fine there. I think that's a great situation there. And then Washington, they got offensive line issues, which they've addressed a little bit. You know, so there's defensive issues. These guys are forced to play at a high level. And then you have some rookies that really come in and do well, and everybody's comparing them to Patrick Mahomes. So, hey, this guy's like Patrick Mahomes. No, he's not going to be like Patrick Mahomes. All right, just maybe eventually. And then CJ put an unfair ceiling on everybody last year doing what he did. But you see, you know, what the kid from Alabama for Carolina did, he struggled quite a bit. So there's no exact science. You got to get the guy in the right system with some good people around him. Then hopefully the guy is very mentally tough, because he's going to go through some stretches where it's not going to be very good and people are going to get on him. oh, he's a failure, he's a bust, blah blah blah. Peyton Manning went 1-11, I think it was, the rookie, and obviously, that's what you kind of hope. You put these guys in the game, they're going to struggle a little bit, but they're going to gain knowledge and confidence moving forward, and just continue to get better and better. And that's what the quarterback position is all about.
Yeah, remember last year when Sam Howell had some good games and people were jumping to the Patrick Mahomes comparison. Oh, hey, Eric Bieniemy, he helped Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, and now he's working with Sam Howell, and the curve is great. He could get there. Nah, there's only a handful, and not even a handful. There's like a fingerful of quarterbacks who reach that level. The last thing from Gruden, and this I guess got a little bit of play on social media, asked for a comparison between Jaden Daniels and someone who has played. Now, I've heard Randall Cunningham, and I can understand that. I saw Randall Cunningham his entire career. He came in 1986 with Philadelphia, played a long time in the league, bounced from team to team towards the end, but he could have taken and should have taken the Vikings to the Super Bowl in the 98 season had Morton Anderson, I guess it was Gary Anderson. I always confuse them. Gary Anderson missed his first field goal of the year. The Falcons went to the Super Bowl and got clobbered by Denver. Randall Cunningham had a good year and could have been the starting quarterback in a Super Bowl. He was that good. And as I say, I've had conversations about him over the years, including one with Sonny Jurgensen, as I drop a name. And Sonny said that he thought Randall could have become one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time had he been coached. And he said he went to the wrong team, went to the Philadelphia Eagles. Buddy Ryan only cared about the defense, just told him to run around and make plays. If he'd have been properly coached with his skill set, Sonny believes he would have been a Hall of Fame type of quarterback. This is Gruden, and Gruden understands what the reaction is going to be when he says it, but he was asked for a comp on Jaden Daniels from John Keim, and here's what he said.
Well, the way he looks on tape, I coach Josh Johnson. Now, obviously, that right. Everybody's going to say Josh Johnson, but he runs like him. He throws like him. He's a hell of a lot more accurate than Josh, but that's what he looks like. The way he plays so upright. He's got his arm strength is kind of questionable to me. Sometimes I think his arm strength, he looks like Teddy Bridgewater. He could throw it far enough, throwing a football, but running, he looks like Josh because of the speed that he had and all that stuff. But combination of ability to run and throw the ball accurately and on the move is pretty important nowadays, and that's what they're going to get with Jaden.
So realize what he's saying about Josh Johnson. He's got the speed of Josh Johnson, but use the term hell of a lot more accurate. So accuracy is very, very key in football. One of the most accurate quarterbacks of all time was Troy Aikman, and that served him very well in his career. So if he can be accurate and he's got the speed of whatever you want to say about Josh Johnson, he continues to stay in the league. People keep giving him jobs. He doesn't last very long, doesn't stay in one place very long, gets injured like he did in the NFC Championship game a couple of years ago. But if he's got that kind of speed and he's got hell of a lot better accuracy, as Gruden says, maybe it's going to work out. But the whole thing, it's a crapshoot. It's a total crapshoot. You do the best you can. You evaluate the best you can. You take your guy and hope for the best. And that's what's going to happen 2 weeks from today. Yeah, it'll be 2 weeks from today that we'll have round one of the draft. So if you remember when the Caps won the Cup 6 years ago, they won it, I believe it was a Thursday night in Vegas. By Friday, they were home with the Cup, celebrating in Georgetown, right in the middle of Georgetown. They were doing keg stands on the Cup. They were having a good old time, and they put it out on social media where they were, and fans showed up to celebrate with it. It was a wonderful week. It was just incredible how much they celebrated. Then, I guess the next day, they went to a game at Nats Park, an afternoon game. They were supposed to just throw out the first ball, hang around for an inning, and leave. Nope, they went there with the cup. They took the cup up to a private box and drank beer all afternoon watching the Nats play. The beer cans lined up and almost blocking them out for the view from the booth as they were watching the game. And there were more celebrations, and it just went on and on and on. And it was just great for an organization that had never won one before. And now they finally had one, and Alex Ovechkin, who had started the year saying we're not going to suck, was able to finally celebrate what he had been after his whole career. And even to this day, 6 years later, it remains legendary what the Caps did with the Cup. So yesterday, Howie Borrow, who is the keeper, the guy who travels with the Stanley Cup, that's a great job. He just makes sure that things don't get out of hand, make sure it gets from place to place, and, gives every player on the Stanley Cup champion team a day to celebrate with the cup. They go home to wherever they're from, some of them Western Canada, they spread all over. He flies with the cup to where they are. They celebrate with family and friends. He takes the cup to the next place. So as we wait to see who the next Stanley Cup winner will be, Howie Borrow showed up yesterday on the Rich Eisen show. And he was asked, well, who, kind of went over the top on his celebration and who put the most interesting substance inside the cup, which includes children, as you'll hear. But he didn't use the name Alex Ovechkin initially. But then he was reminded of what Alex Ovechkin did with the Stanley Cup and what he put in it.
He put in $15,000 worth of caviar in the bowl. So that's his crazy thing.
Wow. What does... So $15,000 of caviar is fills
up in there. Yes.
Okay. Was it above the rim, or did they put
in a bit of ice on the
out?
bottom, but then when they did put it in, it kind of came above the rim for sure. And there's some great photos of it. And everybody dug in, had their little spoons, and dug in. So it was pretty cool.
Now, where in the world would Ovechkin get caviar that amount? How in the world would he be able to acquire such a thing? Wow. So I guess you're wondering, it's how expensive would it be to fill up the Stanley Cup bowl with caviar? We now have our answer.
There you go. That's like
$15,000.
like a pound and a half of caviar, by the way.
Wow. So you've seen all different types of food stuff in there. Soup?
Yes.
We've seen soup in there?
Soup.
What cereal have you seen in there? Come on now. What
Fruit
cereal?
Loops, Captain Crunch, you name it, it's been in there. Cinnamon
Toast Crunch.
or something. Yeah,
Toast Crunch.
Yeah.
It's the best milk.
We've seen I've seen the youngest baby in the bowl too. That's a record that we kind of keep track of.
What's the youngest baby you've seen?
20 minutes old.
20
minutes. Unbelievable as it is. 20 minutes.
Whose was this?
Is that a player?
Whose baby was this?
It was a couple that had a baby in St. Louis back in 2019.
Okay.
And there was actually a couple that was supposed to try for the record ahead of time. But she had a cesarean, and while she was being prepped after the baby was born, some other woman had the baby naturally, and she was ready to go right away. So she kind of jumped in and took over the record right then and there.
Way.
Yeah. The previous record to that was there was 6 hours, and then it got down to 97 minutes, and then 20 minutes now is the standing record.
So what is this record? People are going. What do you mean they're going for it? So is the cup in a hospital?
We did.
This groups of pregnant women going to give birth, and it's like it's a race to the finish?
It was a planned event to go there, yeah, and that's how it happened.
So it's just, hold on a second.
It's like who has the New Year's baby
I'm just
first?
again, my brain is just firing off on all cylinders right now. So there's a bunch of pregnant women in St. Louis.
Okay.
By the way, right?
Two,
Is that what it is? Okay, there's 2 pregnant women in St. Louis, and they both know what the goal is to have a healthy child, A, and B, have it fast enough to set the record for the youngest human ever placed in the bowl of the Stanley Cup. Is that what you're saying?
Well, originally,
do the doctors know they're on the hook too here?
I think there was a little bit of that going on, but originally it was just one woman.
Okay.
And the idea was once she had the baby, then they would put the baby in the bowl.
Yes.
So it would have broke the record no matter what time it was, as long as it within an hour and a half.
Yes.
Well, when the second woman all of a sudden had a baby and she was ready to go right away, that changed the whole storyline right there. So we got the baby in the bowl. They prepped the baby, got her all cleaned up. And
swaddled the child and placed it in the cup. How did the second mom know the cup was available for this sort of thing?
It was planned, I think, with them. That's the way the story, from what I hear, was supposed to happen. So they knew it was happening. They still ended up having their baby put in the bowl afterwards. But
runner-up, though.
Yeah.
And that baby's name was Wayne Gretzky. Turned out to be the greatest player ever. Get out of here. No, I'm just kidding. But that's a wild story.
It is.
What is the, I can see there's an X'd out name on the trophy.
Yes.
What's that story?
1983-84 Edmonton Oilers. Peter Pocklington, who was the owner at the time.
Yes, sir.
He wanted to honor his father, put his father's name on the cup, but he had no affiliation with the team in any way. So when the NHL found that out, they made him exit out because he didn't deserve to be there. So now he's probably more famous for the X-Out than he is just to have the name.
So why not just re-engrave? I guess you're not going to re-engrave the entire band, right?
Probably not. I'm not sure how many teams are already on there, but that's a lot of work, to go back and redo everything.
So it's much easier to just X out his dad's name.
Wow.
Yeah.
How does this investigative process work? I mean, like he just try to sneak it past the goalie, to use the phrase, try to go on the cup keeper's 5-hole. Is that what you're saying with his dad's name?
He tried to sneak it past the NHL, but there are rules, and you have to earn it to be on there, and that's only fair to the guys that have earned it in the past. So if your name's on there and you're not supposed to be, then that's the only way they could take it off.
Is that the only name that's X'd out on the cup?
There is another name that just got X'd out recently. Involved a team from 2010, Chicago Blackhawks.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't usually talk about that.
Okay, understand.
Too much, but,
as much as the same one that says
there was some inappropriate behavior going on.
Understood. I got it.
So.
And so there's 7 more spaces here.
Yes.
And somebody in just a couple of months. How fast does the engraving take place?
It takes about a week. Last year they did it fairly quickly before the summer tour started, but typically it's not done until the end of the summer.
Mm-hmm.
That way the players can start getting their day with the cup a lot quicker. But I think it's fun that they have it on when they have their day. That way they can see their name, they can share it with their family and friends, and it's already on there. So it all depends on the timing and how the team wants to do it. I guess it's up to them if they want to be able to, start their tour right away or just kind of wait and finish it before the season starts again.
Howie Borrow, who is the keeper of the Stanley Cup, the greatest trophy in sports by far. There's nothing close to this. You get Lombardi trophies, and they're great, and it's wonderful to see players run around the field with them and see all the fingerprints on them. And I believe every player gets a replica trophy, every player and coach. But this thing it's just it takes on a life of its own. It's almost like a person. And the great idea, I don't know when this happened, early days of the NHL, where they would take the team, engrave it on a plaque, and put it on the cup. So you're there in history with the other teams. When they, run out of space, they take a ring off the cup at the bottom and then add at the top for new teams. As Eisen said there, I think there are 7 spots left, so we got another 7 years before we have to do that. But it's just wonderful the way that these players and coaches are able to celebrate with it. And we've been playing, I've got one more that I want to play from Cheryl Miller, where there were these Joe Buck shows years ago where he would interview these celebrity athletes, coaches for an hour, and they were great. And he did one with Wayne Gretzky, and it was actually Gretzky's team that started this Stanley Cup celebration. It used to be, prior to 1984, team would win the Stanley Cup, they'd skate around the ice with it, and then it would get sent back to, I believe, the Hockey Hall of Fame. I think that's where it resides most of the time when it's not being taken to the various players. And as Gretzky tells the story, they're getting ready to leave after wrapping up the cup. They finally beat the Islanders. Islanders had won 4 straight. They beat the Islanders in 1984, and now the cup is theirs. And Glenn Sather, the coach, tells the players as they're getting ready to go out to dinner to celebrate, hey, take it with you. And they did, and one thing led to another, and now everybody gets one day with the cup. And it's created a full-time job for Howie Borrow, who travels with the cup and has great stories to tell about the various ways that it has been celebrated, including Alex Ovechkin putting $15,000 worth of caviar in the Stanley Cup, 1.5 pounds of caviar. And I look, when you're spending that much on caviar and you're having your teammates take a little spoonful to eat it, nobody's going to say, hey, this sucks. But it's fish eggs. But obviously it's a delicacy, and it's something that Ovechkin felt was worth spending on. Yesterday was National Siblings Day. I'm the oldest of 4, so I know a lot about siblings. And we had a really cool thing happen with the Cleveland Indians. They have brothers that play on this team. Josh Naylor is the older brother, and his younger brother is the catcher, Bo Naylor, Naylor. And Josh plays first base. In his second at-bat in the bottom of the fourth inning against the White Sox last night, he had a 432-foot home run to give the Guardians their first run of the game. 3 at-bats later, his brother Bo hit a 416 home run off the first pitch of Eric Fetty. Hey, former National, right? It's not the first time that they've done this. July 14th, 2023, they hit home runs in the same inning against the Texas Rangers. The most famous brothers to have played baseball, I think. Now, some might say it's the Canseco brothers, Ozzie Canseco and that duo. But I think it's the Alou brothers. There were 3 of them. Alou brothers who played in the same outfield with the New York Giants in a game in 1960-something, early 60s. Alvin Dark put them all together in the same outfield. All 3 of them had careers. Some might say it's the DiMaggio brothers. Certainly, Joe DiMaggio is the greatest of a brother combination. There were 3 brothers who played. Dom DiMaggio also. I think they played together at one point. Dom and Joe. Dom played with the Red Sox. That's right. Dom was with the Red Sox and Joe was with the Yankees. So there have been brothers that have played in the past, but really cool to see on National Siblings Day that brothers hit home runs in the same game, just 3 at-bats apart. And then also yesterday, maybe not connected to National Siblings Day, but interesting day to announce it, ESPN announced that they have agreed to a 9-year extension through 2034 with Peyton Manning's Omaha Productions, which he does with his brother, Peyton and Eli. And they have the Manning cast, which I'm a big fan of, 11 Monday night games. I don't know whether they're going to expand that with this deal. They're going to continue it, they say, and other content, which is on ESPN Plus called Peyton's Places and Eli's Places. Peyton does a really good job of going back in history and doing historical things, but they're good. They're really entertaining, and everybody's doing it now. This is Monumental jumped on this. They have an alternate, and I think they're doing it tonight. Capitals are playing Buffalo. Grant Paulson and Bruce Boudreau, I think, was on it, and they have guests on. I don't know if it translates as well to hockey, but it works so well in football. And the 2 of them, and because in hockey, it's different in analyzing each play. And the play-by-play team that we have here is just great. I mean, Joe B. and Locker, they're tremendous. They're the best local, I think, the best local tandem in history. You can maybe say Sonny, Sam, and Frank doing the football on the radio. They were great as well. But they're just really excellent at what they do. And you'd have an alternate thing that you can flip over to. And I believe for the basketball game tomorrow night, if I'm not mistaken, Steve Buckhantz is doing it with several others, kind of an alternate cast, which is cool. So the Manning brothers are going to continue with ESPN through 2034. And I've said this before, with Tom Brady getting ready to make $37.5 million a year doing games for Fox, a 10-year deal, I'm not so sure that's going to last. I think Brady is going to look at this and say, this makes a lot more sense for me. What if you had Brady and Gronk? They'd be a great combo. Or, he could do it with any of the others he played for. What if, how about this? How about if you humanize Bill Belichick a little bit? I'm sure they've made peace now. Wouldn't that be an interesting combo? Belichick in his house, Tom Brady in his house, and they're doing an alternate telecast for Fox. That might be, and you could say, well, you're watering down the product. No, not really, because you just add the 2 of them together, and that's meaningful. I don't know. I think it just works, and the chemistry between the 2 of them, between Peyton and Eli, it's tremendous. It's really, really good. So I have enjoyed that very much. And one other football story here, Caleb Williams. I talked to Mel Kiper about this the other day, that the off the field concerns, and I mentioned the Jeff George concerns in 1990 when Mel had him rated, I think it's the 59th or 89th best prospect because of the off the field things that he was difficult to deal with. And you keep hearing more and more about Caleb Williams, about, his father's influence and this, that, and the other. Well, now on a recent appearance on Kevin Clark's This Is Football podcast, Greg McElroy, who was a great college quarterback at Alabama, said about Caleb Williams that he doesn't play with a chip on his shoulder. Quote, Caleb Williams, from the time he stepped on campus at Oklahoma to the time he stepped on campus at USC, has never experienced adversity. Very little adversity as far as how he is received, how he's portrayed as the next best guy. So Caleb Williams cracked back on social media, and he put the definition of adversity, quote, a state of instance or serious or continued difficulty or misfortune. And he gave 3 different examples. Didn't start freshman year. Popped a hammy in the championship game first quarter. Lost because of my hammy. 7-5 my last year of college football. So, yeah, he's saying I did face adversity here. He entered his freshman year at Oklahoma as the backup to Spencer Rattler, and in the Texas game, came in, led a big comeback. Sooners won 55-48, became the starting quarterback rest of the way. Sophomore sustained a hamstring injury on a 59-yard run in the first quarter of USC's loss to Utah in the Pac-12 championship game. The game was tied at the time, and Utah went on to win 47-24. And then last season, Williams threw for 3,600 yards, 30 touchdowns, and just 5 interceptions. But USC wound up 7-5 and got to the Holiday Bowl, and that's because their defense was god-awful. So, the smear campaign maybe continues from teams hoping that Caleb Williams drops. I'm not saying the Commanders are necessarily involved in that. But, those are the kind of things that happen, and good for Caleb Williams for cracking back on that.
And now, breaking news from ESPN 630.
It is being widely reported, including by TMZ, that OJ Simpson has passed away at the age of 76 from cancer. There was a tweet put out by his family that he has passed away. And, it's you look at one of these things and you have emotions that go back so many years on this. And although he's been out of the news pretty much since he's gotten out of prison, which was, 7-8 years ago, it's a lifetime that you look back on, and there are just so many facets to it, including how he was, in fact, the most famous person in history to be charged with murder. He was acquitted in court, found guilty in civil court, went to jail for something that was unrelated. He had a gun, and he showed up with some other people and was trying to get back some memorabilia that allegedly had been stolen from him. But if you think back to 30 years ago and how just every day was OJ discussion, and one of the most intriguing murder trials we've ever seen. And this was someone who was considered to be one of the greatest football players who ever lived. He was the first man to run for 2,000 yards. He was a Heisman Trophy winner at USC and was like the second or third in a long line of running backs who won that award. And you hear that he has passed away at the age of 76. I believe that he killed his wife and Ron Goldman. I believe that happened. He was not found guilty in criminal court of that, but in civil court, and I believe that he did do that. And we spent so many years and so much time talking about OJ and was OJ guilty of what he did, and so much evidence that was found with his blood and Goldman's blood and Nicole's blood on a pair of socks, and the cut that was on his hand, and the celebrity nature of all this with Judge Ito seemingly enjoying the celebrity of running this trial, and so many documentaries that have been made and made for TV movies and so forth and so on. All those things related to this one person. And the name O.J. Simpson will mean so many different things to so many people as years go by. And just this, coming up today that we just find out, and it's really this is just broken within the last 5 minutes or so. So you may, if you're just hearing this for the first time, you may want to text a friend or whomever. But this is now being reported. But now Adam Schefter has it, and this is just his tweet here. OJ Simpson, the former football great who was accused and ultimately acquitted of the brutal 1994 slayings of his ex-wife and her friend, has died, according to his family. He was 76. Their tweet was, on April 10th, our father, Orenthal James Simpson, succumbed to his battle with cancer. He was surrounded by his children and grandchildren. During the time of transition, his family asked that you please respect their wishes for privacy and grace, a statement from his family said. And just, a life in the public eye, not just for his football, but, post-football, OJ Simpson became really, as far as I remember, I could be wrong about this, but the first incredibly successful national pitchman who was pitching products not necessarily related to football. He was with Hertz. He made movies. He had talent in making movies. He could push products, his long relationship with Hertz and other products. But behind the scenes, there was this man who was involved, had a very, very dark side to him, traveled in circles of the biggest celebrities. And I just remember, the slayings occurred in June of 1994, and the trial took place a year later. I remember getting ready for a show with Tony Kornheiser, and Tony knew OJ, as most people of that level of the business did, and he said, OJ Simpson can't be a suspect in this. And, in fact, he did go on trial for this, and one of the most famous murder trials that ever occurred in 1995, and ultimate acquittal with people who's become household names because of it. Johnny Cochran, who's passed away, Mark Furman, Marcia Clark, Judge Lance Ito. All the people that were involved. Larry King got caught up in the celebrity of this. There was Marlon Brando was sitting in and watching in the courtroom. I mean, it was just incredible. If you're too young to remember this, what this was like, and then it exposed, more than anything, it exposed the racial divide in this country that you had when the acquittal occurred. Whites who were crying and blacks who were celebrating this. And it wasn't necessarily because they thought he was innocent. It was because that, a black man finally got a fair trial in this. And we heard a lot of things that we had not heard before, like people, African Americans driving expensive cars and being pulled over just because of the color of their skin. And the incredible, racial strife that was going on in Los Angeles, where we had just years earlier the Rodney King riots and so forth. So this was a person who had such a varied life and had so many crazy things happen with him over the years. I don't want to say happened to him, but happened involving him, and the way he really for the last 30 years has become such a lightning rod of a person, and now finally succumbing to cancer at the age of 76. So O.J. Simpson, again, has passed away at the age of 76, and I'm sure there'll be much more to talk about this on this tomorrow, and there'll be lots of conversation. So we'll spend part of tomorrow's show on O.J. Simpson and what now others say about him after his passing away at the age of 76. Speaking of age, I saw this today. There's a farmer in Peru, and the government says that he is 124 years old. As far as I know, and I'm interested in these things because I've gotten a lot of grief over the years for saying that I plan to live to be 100 years old. But the oldest person on record is a French woman, Jean Calumet, who passed away at the age of 122. There's even some doubt about that. But at the moment, the oldest living person recognized by the Guinness Book of World Record, or the oldest living man, is someone in England. His name is what is his name? His name is Tindaswood, and he was born the same year that the Titanic sunk in 1912. And he would be 111 years old. This is according to the Guinness Book of World Records. But John Alfred Tinniswood is his name, oldest living on record. He earned the title after the death of 114-year-old Juan Vicente Perez on April the 2nd. So he's been the title holder here for just over a week. But in Peru, they are claiming that a local farmer is 124 years old, and he should be considered the world's oldest living man. Marcelino Abad Tolentino reportedly celebrated his 124th birthday on April 5th, claiming he was born in 1990, and they have produced a passport which he received in 2019, government-issued ID card and pension, which shows his date of birth as being the 4th of April of 1900. His diet, they say, consists of fruits and lamb, and like most in that part of the world, he enjoys chewing on cocoa leaves. Whatever he's doing, whether he's 124 or not, he's old for sure, and he doesn't look 124 if you could actually do that. But the Peruvian government is trying to get in touch with the Guinness Book and see if they can authenticate the fact that he is 124 years old. The man in England, Tinniswood, he doesn't have any special diet. Says he says he has impressive luck. There is a woman, though, who's considered, I don't know if she's in the Guinness Book, a woman in California, Branis Moreira, who is 117 years old. She was born in 1907, a year after her parents immigrated from Spain to the U.S. and celebrated her latest birthday on March the 4th. So, I don't know. I mean, I watched my father, who was in great shape, never was overweight in his life, and he took a pretty steady decline from the age of 90. He might still be alive now had he not suffered a couple of falls. He was very stubborn and had a couple of falls which hastened his death. But I just see that from 90, what happens to you, and 124 years. I mean, that's another 34 years after that. And, I guess it's possible, but, the doctors say that you're pretty much living on borrowed time after you're 90, like everything else is gravy. But, here's a person who the Peruvian government has documented as being 124 years old. There's a picture here in this story I'm looking at, which is a passport showing date of birth, 5/4/1900, a Bob Tolentino, and maybe he did it. I don't know, but that would be absolute. And I guess that would make him, if they can authenticate this. Now it may be he went in for his passport and he didn't know the date of birth and he just said 1900. And they went, okay, 1900. They wrote it down, and that was that. Again, the story that is just now breaking and will be discussed throughout the day and throughout tomorrow is that OJ Simpson has passed away at the age of 76, dying of cancer. And someone who is, you just say the name, and there's instant reaction to that. There's one way or another that you believe that he killed his wife and her friend, or you do not believe that, but that he has remained even in jail somewhat in the public eye. Spent 9 years in prison for something unrelated to that, and has been out now for 6 or 7 years, and now has passed away of cancer at the age of 76. I'm sure Mike Callow will have more to say about that. Coming up next, Tony is back on Monday, so Mike's in the next couple of days, and I will be back tomorrow morning with more on this and much more at 9 a.m.